Before we do anything, we must secure the server. An unsecured server connected to the internet is a target within minutes. This module will lock down access step by step. The first thing you should always do on a new server is update it. This ensures that security patches are installed, known vulnerabilities are fixed, and that you're running the latest stable version. To do that, type apt update, and then once done, type apt upgrade -y. Logging in as root all the time is dangerous. If something goes wrong, it has full control over the server. So instead, we can create a regular user and grant admin privileges. To create a new user, type add user, space, followed by your username. You'll be asked to enter a password. When entering a password, the keystrokes will not be visible. That's totally normal. Just press enter when you're done. Then retype your password to confirm. You can skip these if you want by pressing enter, and then at the end press Y to confirm. Now that we have a user, we need to grant admin privileges. To do this, type usermod space -a capital G space sudo space and then your username. Once done, we can switch to our new user by typing su dash followed by our username. You can type who am I and it will return the user you switched to. Now that we have our user, let's set up SSH key authentication to make connecting to the server even more secure. In short, an SSH key lets your computer prove its identity to the server. So you can either create an SSH key or use an existing one if you have it. We will start by creating a new SSH key using SSH-keygen command. When prompted, press enter to accept the default location. And if you want to password protect your SSH key, enter a password. If not, just press enter and it will skip the password. This creates a private and public key pair. The private key will remain on your computer and should never be shared. The public key can and will be shared with your server. We can copy the key using this command, ssh-copy-id space your username and your server IP address. Type yes to confirm. You'll be asked to enter the password of the user that you created on your server. We can check if it worked by connecting to a server using SSH, then your username, and your server IP. If you set a password on your SSH key, you'll need to enter it. Otherwise, if SSH is set up correctly, you should be able to log in without being prompted for the password to the server. If you have an existing SSH key, you can check using ls//.ssh/ or a different SSH folder if you didn't use the default folder when generating SSH keys on your computer. If you see these files, then you have a generated SSH key pair. Once you confirm that you have SSH keys on your computer, you can copy them over using this command, ssh-copy-id space your username and then your server's IP address. Type yes to confirm and enter your server's password. We can check if it worked by connecting to the server using SSH space your username and then your IP address. If you log in without the server asking for your user password, then you set up SSH correctly. Now let's disable root login and optionally disable password login. Disabling root login is recommended as this will help secure our server, and disabling password login is optional but also recommended. This will help ensure that you can log into your server only using SSH keys that you set up. To do this, we access the SSH deconfig file using sudo nano /etc/ssh/sshdeconfig. This will open a text editor inside your terminal. With arrow keys, you can scroll down to the very bottom to find permit root login. To disable it, replace yes with no. And if you want to also disable password login, you can add a line below and type password authentication space no. To save your changes, press Ctrl X, then Y, and then the enter key. To apply our changes, type sudo space systemctl space restart space SSH. We can exit from our server by typing exit, then log back into the server using SSH space your username and then your IP address. If you log in correctly, then you're good to go. Now let's install our firewall, create a few rules, and enable it to finalize securing our server. You can check if you have a firewall installed using UFW space -- version. If it prints UFW followed by a version, that means it's already installed. If you don't have it, you can install it using sudo apt-get install UFW. Let's add SSH as our first rule so we don't lock ourselves out using this command. Sudo UFW allow open SSH. Make sure that you spell it correctly and with proper cases. Otherwise, the rule will not apply correctly and you can lock yourself out. Then we can allow HTTP and HTTPS traffic using this command. Sudo UFW allow HTTP and sudo UFW allow HTTPS. To enable our firewall, we can type sudo UFW enable and then press Y to confirm. We can see the ports we enabled using sudo UFW status. So the reason we type OpenSSH instead of the default port 22 is because this way it binds to the SSH daemon that is running on our server and not just the port. So if you change the port in the future, you will not have to reconfigure your firewall rules and won't lock yourself out. Trust me, I've been there. So we have OpenSSH added on both IPv4 and IPv6 ports, as well as HTTP and HTTPS on both IPv4 and IPv6 ports. We can exit from our server by typing exit, then logging back in using the SSH command, and if you logged in, then you set everything up correctly. This wraps up securing our server. In the next module, we'll cover purchasing and setting up our domain and DNS.